time for Tycoons of Small Biz, spotlighting the true backbone of the American economy, the true tycoons of business in America, the owners, founders, and CEOs of small businesses. The show's hosts, Austin Peterson and Landon Mance, are registered representatives of Lincoln Financial Advisors Corporation, a broker-dealer member SIPC, and registered investment advisor. The views expressed by your hosts, Austin and Landon, are not necessarily the views of Lincoln Financial Advisors. Let's lean in as Austin and Landon connect with this week's Tycoons.
Good afternoon, Tycoons, and welcome to today's episode of Tycoons of Small Biz. I'm Austin Peterson, your host, here as always in studio in Tempe, Arizona. Unfortunately, the best co-host in the business is not with us today for personal reasons. And I'll just say this, this is a tough time in the world. I think that we are not meant to be separated from one another. And so the byproduct of this pandemic is that people are really struggling mentally. And so let this be an opportunity for you to reach out to a neighbor, to a friend that you haven't spoken with in a while, and just check in with them and see how they're doing. So unfortunately, Landon's not with us today, but we are excited to have a tycoon of small biz with us today, Dylan Vicha. Dylan's the CEO of Windom Security here in Arizona. Windom Security is Arizona's first farm system for law enforcement, and they provide trustworthy and effective private security to local communities, municipalities, and police departments. So, Dylan, welcome to the show. Glad to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Looking forward to this.
Yeah, we're excited to have this conversation. So before we jump into things, if you're listening to this show for the first time today and you haven't heard our show before, just know that Tycoons of Small Biz is a radio program and a podcast that's put together by small business owners for small business owners. The intent of this podcast is to give small business owners here in our local community and nationwide an opportunity to share their story. The small business owner community in our country is truly the backbone of our economy. And Landon and I are big believers in that. We're multi-generational entrepreneurs, and we put this podcast on so that we have an opportunity or give an opportunity to small businesses to share their story. And certainly Dylan's got a great story. So Dylan, before we jump into the business side of things, we typically have our guests tell a little bit about themselves personally. So tell us where you grew up. Tell us a little bit about your family life growing up or now. What else kind of led you to where you are today.
Sure. So I grew up in Northern California, up in the mountains of Santa Cruz Mountains. It's in between San Jose and the beach, basically. Town's called Los Gatos. My family's from North Dakota. Moved out when I was younger. Most of them stayed out there. Most of them were farmers. And I grew up, racing motorcycles and hanging out in the mountains. I mean, that was my thing. I turned pro when I was 18 out of high school, and moved to Southern California to go give it a shot. That's kind of it's kind of the place where you got to be. Los Angeles area is where you go to see if that's really going to work out for you. Unfortunately, I got hurt, and I had to try and figure out something else to do. A friend of mine was checking out ASU, which I'd never heard of. I never looked at colleges or anything. So I agreed to come out from Los Angeles and get a tour, and I just kind of fell in love with Tempe and downtown and misters, palm trees. I was wearing no T-shirt and board shorts at midnight, and I was like, this is much better than Chino, where I was at in Southern California. So I came out and decided to go to school, obviously. The only thing I thought that would have been for me was I had four of my friends growing up racing got paralyzed from racing, and so I thought maybe that's something I want to get into. So I was going down the spinal cord was the path I was going to go after, research for that or treatment, and I went into the pre-med program at ASU. Ended up graduating with a pre-med degree in biology. I got a minor in chemistry and a minor in exercise and wellness. And then right when I was doing my volunteering at hospitals before you take the MCATs, I decided that it really wasn't for me and thought, you know what, I think I just like the challenge of it. That was it. It was really hard. I had to, especially the pre-med programs for sure. Organic chemistry still gives me nightmares. But I had to look for something new, and I had got a job offer at kind of a startup bank here. Nothing about finance, but the people in it, founders of the bank were ex-athletes, a lot of them, and they figured it'd be a good spot for me, and I basically, to me, it was I was there for 4 years, went from startup to sold to went public, and then we were a public traded bank, and then we got taken over by the FDIC in receivership to nothing. So from all the way from the bottom to the top to the bottom again, I got to see how the banking world and system worked, which I thought was like it was basically getting a MBA in finance for me. I think I learned a lot about business in general, how to finance it, how it can work and not work, how to it was. I enjoyed the loan committee meetings and being around some of the people that have been doing this for a long time, and just the mentors I got out of it was so valuable. And while the bank was going down, I was looking for something else to do, and decided to start up a mountain hunting ski lodge in the middle of Scottsdale. It was called The Lodge. That was back in 2007, and so that was my first real business venture, and did really well. That actually opened up the doors for me to start to do the things I really wanted to do, which was help veterans and first responders. So my best friend growing up is Jared Allen, who played in the NFL, and him and I came together and started Homes for Wounded Warriors back in 2008 after Jared went on a USO tour in the Middle East to bases and came back and said he wanted to do something. I was kind of blowing off the conversation because I remember it very well, and I was like, yeah, that'd be great. I support the troops. And then Jared, I remember he looked at me and he said, well, what do you do? And I had nothing. It was like I regurgitated a bumper sticker, and I went home and spent my time on YouTube looking at stories of disabled veterans, combat injured veterans, what their problems were, housing issues, financially, all of these things. And then before I went to sleep, I Googled how to start a 501c3 and printed out the application on the IRS's website. And that was the start of Homes for Wounded Warriors. It's called, the full name is Jared Allen's Homes for Wounded Warriors. So because of the success of the first sports bar, I was able to focus all my time on this nonprofit, and I loved it. It changed. It opened my eyes up to what the men and women in uniform do for us, not just overseas, but also here locally on the first responder side too. So that's all I did. And so really proud of that charity. It's built 21 homes across the country now, all mortgage free, all custom, and it's continuing to do that, and it'll be hopefully doing that forever. It's based out of the Air Park in North Scottsdale area, not up in that area now. But that's literally where I started to kind of look around and pay attention. I never served my community before. I never obviously served my country, but to me that was my way. That was my way of finding a way to give back. And then I'm branching off from that. Wrote the bylaws for that charity based off of the bylaws I got from the Tillman family. I grew up with the Tillmans back home in the Bay Area, so the Tillman Foundation, I took bits and pieces of it and kind of pieced it together for how, because I had no idea what I was doing back then, but then looked at, since I wrote the bylaws, very, very black and white. There's nothing more we can do for people besides give them a home, which was fine. I wrote it to be very specific, so people that donated money knew exactly what it was going to do. So then I wanted to do other things, so we started other nonprofits up with some other friends, and now I'm a part of the Marine Raider Foundation, Mission to Alpha, which is a passive nonprofit that can help first responders and military, as well as PTSD Foundation of America, which is Camp Hope in Houston. So through all this nonprofit work, and it's just being in that world, in that industry, I wanted to start up a company that hired veterans, but also one that not only hired veterans, but did something for the community, for first responders. I wanted to find a way to put all these pieces together so I could, and change something. I really wanted it to be something that really made a difference. So took a look at, the policing industry, let's say, and then security industry, and had an idea for how the Major League Baseball has a minor league system. I thought that local policing should have one as well. There's already an industry there of private security that you could use that to get experience for future police officers. So it's a stepping stone for future police officers, but it's already out there, and it frees up police officers from doing the work that the community doesn't want them to do anyways, which they don't want to do for the most part. So there already was there. So I wanted to find a way I had to first start a business in private security, connect it to law enforcement, and then and put all these pieces together so it would work, and then I can get a pilot program launched. I pitched the idea to Governor Ducey back in 2018, and said, "This is what I want to do. I'm not going to try it if you're not interested in this idea, but if you are, I'm all in." And he said yes. He made some introductions for me, and I spent basically 8 months going to meetings with police chiefs, commanders, city council members, mayors, DEA, FBI, DPS, the Sheriff Penzone. I went to the housing departments in the cities and state, and I went around, and AZ Post, which regulates law enforcement here, and I went around and police unions, and I went around and I said, well, how would you do it? What would you change? What should I do? And basically spent 2018 figuring out how to put all this together, and launched Windom Security in 2019. And so now this is a passion project of mine. Hiring veterans transitioning is a big one too. I've got a lot of experience with that. I found a lot of veterans that were not sure where they wanted to go, kind of blowing GI bills on wasted time degrees just to get stipend checks. I was like finding veterans that wanted to get into public safety as a career and create a company that could be a landing pad for them, a place where they could get paid well, learn some things, get some mentoring, open up their eyes, take a look around, and make a decision. By freeing up some time to make the right decision. Took some of the ideas from the military, a delayed entry program or delayed enlistment program, where it's a 12-month program prior to boot camp. And I said, it's probably the same thing let's do the same thing for policing. And that's what Windom was. We tested out we formed some relationships in the beginning with Phoenix PD, and then tried out the product here, the way we're going to do it in some of the lower income communities. And I wanted to see if we could do, not play cop, nothing like that, just a better quality, connected to local PD product, and then with people that are on their way into a career in public safety. So not like just people that are picking up part-time jobs or just retirees. This was like, let's find people on their way that are concerned and a sponge, learning, want to do a good job, want to hustle. And we did a 90-day trial in some communities, and after 90 days, we ran the data, and calls for service dropped in half. So right away we were like, well, we got something here. This is freeing up local PD. This is helping the community out. Let's take this model and start to plop it all over the valley. And then so now we're in 130 communities now in Maricopa County. And we take over 1,000 calls every month, which would normally be potentially a 911. So we don't take 911s and go try and do it ourselves and play cowboy. We know when to redirect, but we free up local PD, which we thought that's going to help us with solid relationships. And then eventually the city started to pick it up, and then they'd see, and then eventually the police department hired us, and now we work directly for local police. So I call my pre-cops. They're out there working with local police, and they're learning, and eventually once they probably a few more months with me, they'll apply to whichever police department works for them. So yeah, that was a long kind of discussion to it. Lastly, an apprenticeship program, which is a pre-cop model. It's a pathway to law enforcement is my program. It's basically prerequisites to the police academy, but it teaches you a lot of things besides just the tactics of it. It's about learning how to solve problems in the community. And while working for me, since we're in low income, mid to high student housing, public properties downtown, you're going to get a very well-rounded experience solving problems in every demographic that Maricopa County has to offer. So if you work for me for 6 months, we're going to find out if you really should get into a police academy, if you really should. That's that filter system I was talking about. If you can make it to the majors, if you're the right person for the majors. So now that that's all kind of moving forward, and we got some things going, the next the next big thing popping up is Scottsdale Community College has a spring 22. We have our first veteran pathway to law enforcement work and learn program. It's a 9-month certificate program where you get taught by former local police as well as current police, and you get a certificate in law enforcement while getting introduced to different police departments and working for Windom, so you can apply what you're learning. And the sponsoring police departments agencies is MCSO, Scottsdale, Tempe, and Phoenix police departments. So really cool opportunity if people are interested in that. So this to me is it's a passion. I'm trying to find a way to free up police, to provide work for veterans, to address some of the issues of police reform and the defund the police that we hear a lot about, which I believe this is a really good solution for, and create and also obviously create a successful business. So, and we're doing really well, growing really fast. We got a new building in Phoenix now that we have more room for classrooms and our hand-to-hand training rooms. Growing and growing and growing, and we're just at about the 100 employee mark. So really excited about it. A lot of people are. It's really fun to see people come into Windom and then use that as a step to wherever they want to go and end up somewhere. So working on improving things, adding things that we can do, as well as signing up new customers, clients, municipalities, private, mostly real estate companies. So really having fun with this one. So.
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting take on things, right? I mean, the why for you, I think you've kind of already hit it, right? I mean, you grew this passion for the veteran community in working with Jared and getting this start. And, you talked about how you started the nonprofit, and now you're kind of turning it into this business where you give that stepping stone from veterans, coming out of active military to doing something else, right? Staying in public service. A lot of them are very, passionate about that, but they're not sure how to do it, which I think is obviously one part of that. The other part that we kind of have to unpack here is, you mentioned right at the very end, there's there's a problem with policing in our country today, and we've got, a country that's really kind of fractured on this defund the police movement and things that are going on inside of the, the police system countrywide, racially motivated and otherwise, that, kind of needs to be fixed. And then the last part, or, you kind of mentioned it at the beginning, is this kind of farm system, because the reality is security for the most part, and you can tell me if I'm wrong on the statistics and it's just something I saw on TV or movies or whatever, but a lot of times security guards are people who didn't quite make it into the police academy or failed out in the police academy, retired people, those sorts of things. And now all of a sudden you've taken an opportunity to say, these are the people who aren't quite ready for the big leagues, like you said, and it gets them that training to then, one, decide, is this what I want to do? And two, to get them some training and exposure to what it really looks like, so that they're even more prepared as they enter the police academy. Is that fair?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the private security guards, bad reputation. Really, everyone thinks of Paul Blart and Mall Cop and unreliable and sleepy guards. And so that was one of the things I spoke to the governor about. Was I said I can't do anything unless I can get local law enforcement to trust it, and they're never going to trust it unless they know unless there's the training comes from them, which is why I went to AZ Post in the beginning, which is where all the training comes for the police. And I was like that. And the other thing is most of the private security companies are more staffing agencies. It's a minimum wage. They're just putting bodies out there, so it was never going to go that route. We had to, just believe that these are some people that might need a little extra help before they can get into policing. But really, it's about that. Most of the people we hire, they could go right now to policing. They're not, or to law enforcement. They're just not sure exactly where they want to go yet. So you got to motivate them to come into Windom. So recruiting people into Windom was like, okay, well, private security, low pay. So let's look at where they put the pay ranges, right? I think in the Valley right now for a seasoned security guard, you're going to be in the $13 to $15 an hour range, right? Where a starting guard rookie at Windom makes 19. So you start at 19. So we put the pay right in between what the private security industry is paying here and what law enforcement pays to start. So we wanted to be like a financial incentive too. Like, this isn't minimum wage. You're gonna, you start out as a full-time guard. You're gonna start out at $40,000 a year. So it's not spectacular right when you first start, but it's not too bad either. So it was like, how do we attract people? Through the veteran networks. Now, if it's a veteran, and we don't only just hire veterans, we have mostly over 80% of Windom is veterans. My nickname is Civvy. I get made fun of a lot. I love working around veterans, so I have no problem at all. But it's finding, why would you come here? Well, you get to gain experience. You get a lot of introductions to maybe people that you wouldn't have been able to meet, work in interesting places, give back to the community, work for, and the culture at Windom, that was it has to be, the camaraderie has to be there. It's got to be like, help out, coming out of a unit in the military, it's got to feel safe. It's got to feel like everyone's working together. It's also got to be high energy. It can't be this slow, sleepy place. So Windom's, it's a lot of fun there. To see the team together, and because we're a 24/7 operation all over the valley, people love working there. They love working with the other, whether it's a veteran or not. They get that feel again that it's competitive, it's a hustle. So we had to create that. Well, starting from scratch, it's like, how do you do that? What do we do? Especially with sometime in the very beginning, some of the work was pretty slow and not very exciting. Well, we kind of kept preaching it and believing it and hiring the right team too. I mean, the infrastructure there was, we got about 15 people that work work the 9 to 5, and they're all very, very talented, interesting, very, really cool stories about what they did. Most of them served in the military, and they went and contracted. They went and contracted back in the Middle East, bounced around. So we got people that have a lot of the people they recruited from some of the private contracting companies that went away, or the ones that they just knew some good people that wanted to keep them here. So really, the talented leaders that people want to work for and inspire. That's what was another big one. Another big piece of this too was getting them to come in. We're not turning away people we wouldn't turn away someone that was former law enforcement, but what we found is the people that it's just not like a good retirement job. Like, it's a hustle. We have a product that we sell to our customers, private companies and municipalities that we pride ourselves on, and we're a very we like to think that we're just night and day different than the other companies. So we expect a lot out of our employees, and that's why we compensate them so well. So that was tough. I always joke and say it's a psychological reconstruction of the security guard. I mean, that's really what it is. We're up against that. A lot of times is the reputation. People look at it and they just go, because they think they already know who we are. But it's so fun to see the positive results that come out of it. It's so fun to see the happy, whether it's property managers or city managers or even police officers that at first were just like, skeptical about it. What we're really trying to do, but we have a lot of wins, and everyone gets to share it at the company. So it's a big family. It's a fun place to be. I absolutely enjoy it, especially for a civvy like me.
Yeah. Well, so you may not even realize it, but you've kind of got somebody here in studio, our producer, Daryl. We've had a conversation about this, and he's got friends that have been police officers. He wanted to be a police officer. And he's got these friends that are kind of disenfranchised now with the policing system and, what's going on in our country and this fracture, and so, not to steal from the studio owner, Karen, who would love Daryl to be here for the rest of his life. But if he's considering still law enforcement, or what do you say to somebody like him or his friends who are disenfranchised about what Windom Security is potentially doing to kind of help this defund the police movement and what the police looks like in the future?
Yeah. Well, so a big piece of now I recognized early on that the training for the farm system, the prerequisite training programs and everything, it can't just come from law enforcement. It has to come from the community too. It's a big piece of it. I just came from a meeting with AP Powell, with Arizona, and he puts together a lot of amazing bridge forums that brings in people from the community as well as law enforcement together to have these conversations and talk about these things. So I truly believe that, it's not one side or the other who gets to select it. It's more of you got to work together, and I believe that the community has to have a big stake in how they're policed. And so they need to. That's why I came from that meeting, was to find out, what am I missing here? What are some things that I need to look for in future if I'm going to produce future police officers? What are some things that I can train on? What are some things that I cannot? This is it's. I don't think no one's ever done something like this before, is kind of what I've been told. So I want to make sure that I'm going down the right path. I'm not trying to go only on one side of this and then try and convince the other. I'm trying to go to both and have them both be a part and be stakeholders in creating it. Unfortunately, I'm paying attention to especially the numbers of African American police officers going down and down and down, and it's not surprising if your immediate community, family, if your world has maybe a negative or a going downward or dwindling with support for police, it's going to be really hard to become a police officer, because you might want to feel like you're going against your family or going against your world. So it's unfortunate, because I think there's a lot of value in having a diverse police department, especially when the city is diverse too as well. So any of these changes that in police reform, and it's not us versus them, because police officers can recognize that it needs to be changed as well. It's got to be, you're changing with the times, you're changing with the community, and everyone's got to be on board. It's got to be it can't be the us versus them mentality. And I always joke, or I always say that, I don't call myself or Windom a pro-police or an anti-police. I've always said we're with police. Up, down, better for worse. Like we got the police officers, the men and women that wear the uniform, they live here too, right? It's not like everyone's ecstatic about what's going on today. I mean, it's not like you can't deny who's responsible and who's not. You can't deny there's mistakes. You can't deny there's the people that shouldn't belong there, which is a big piece of the filter system, like I talked about. Like to me, it's if you think of Major League Baseball and you bring somebody straight from high school into the majors, and sometimes you find out that they're not a good fit, right? Well, what happens? You lose some money or something. Well, what happens in public safety? You find out somebody isn't a good fit. Bad things happen, and that is what I'm talking about. Is you can filter out the people that just don't have what it takes to become a police officer in today's world, and you'll learn that at Windom. Doesn't matter what your background is, where you come from. You spend 6 months at Windom. You're going to be in pretty much every demographic, and if you don't have the ability to be a good person, solve problems, be smart, and de-escalate, and not, then that's unfortunately some things can't be taught. So if someone makes a mistake at Windom, you're not armed and you don't have police powers, so it's less likely to become a major issue where somebody gets hurt or killed, right? So that's why I always say that this to me, that this would definitely help solve that. And every recruiter I've spoken to in law enforcement has agreed that, man, if you had a report card on everybody before they got to the police academy, before the taxpayers spent the money on because it's expensive to run people through it, this is also a piece of this model. It helps with the attrition rates too, which saves money. It's also cheaper. So as far as the whatever you look at defund the police, it's a lot. One of the arguments is freeing up cash for programs in the community that help bring up the community and end some of these cycles. It's much cheaper to go this route as well. Police recruiting is down. Well, we fill in the gaps and take on the stuff that police don't want to do anyways, and we're not armed and we can't arrest people. So a lot of the lower liability stuff in the communities, suspicious person, homeless, sometimes domestic violence issues, we do not have the ability to arrest. And for the most part, a lot of the things our role is to solve the problem without having to call 911. Now we know when to call 911, and we're definitely not going to risk, try and put our guards at risk. But it frees up the police to focus on violent crimes. It frees up the police to focus on what I think most people would agree that they should be focusing on, and not some of this lower liability stuff that they don't have the people for anyways. So that's the way I look at it. I think it's a skeletal system that would work in any major city. It would free it up. So a skeletal system that handles the community problems, but also gives future police officers experience that they could use prior to getting to a police academy. So when they get to the police academy, they have something to talk about. They understand it. They've been in those situations. You get a lot of, if you go straight from no job, nothing, into trying to apply to the police, to a police academy, you don't really have much. It's really hard to tell how that person's going to do. Now, the military is great because you travel around the world for the most part, and you're going to be around all kinds of situations. You have to figure things out. College is okay too if you're involved. Great. But there's a lot there's a lot of growing up you have to do before you become a police officer. So I think this is an opportunity for that, and it's not a reinventing. It's not a new industry. It's already there. So why don't we just leverage what's already there? And try and make a change here. Now, I'm doing my best to get in front of anyone in the community that will talk to me, whether they're for it, against it, whatever. I want this to be something that helps, which is why I was just with, like I said, AP Powell. He's put together so many great conversations, and that I thought I wanted to see what his thoughts were on what we're trying to do here, and to get his support behind it, and to ask some questions and things that I'm not thinking about. Because, I didn't grow up in that community. I'm not going to say that I did when I didn't. I grew up in the middle of nowhere in the mountains and the sticks, and I never had to go through anything like that. And I got to make sure that I don't know everything. I got to make sure that this is going to work. Like I said in the beginning, it's not just getting the police's support; it's getting the community and the police to support it. So.
Yeah, I think any rational person in our country realizes that there's a need for change inside of the police system, right? And unfortunately, we live in a world where it's 144 characters at a time, or the sound bite, whatever, and so they choose words an awful lot of the time that don't necessarily mean what they're trying to do, right? Because I don't think anybody's really trying to completely defund the police and say we do not need police, right? But the movement is defund the police. And so then you've got people who don't look into it and think, well, they're trying to get rid of police. We still need police. Like, who's going to do this? Who's going to do that? And that's not really what's trying to be done here. But because we use words that engage people's emotions, then people get emotional on both sides without fully understanding what either side's trying to do, right? So we definitely need to reform the system, and there needs to be something better. And I think this farm system is a great way to kind of put it together. And you're testing this in the 6th largest city in America. That's a very diverse city. We've got 8 million people or so, here in the Phoenix metro area. And so it's a great place to test this out. But the biggest thing that I think that you said that really makes me think that this is a way to really change things is your guards are unarmed and do not have police power, but they're dealing with a lot of these things, like you said, that the police don't necessarily want to be dealing with anyway. But this is a training ground for them to learn how to de-escalate things and to deal with problems that happen on a regular basis without ever even thinking about pulling a firearm, right? Yeah. And so it teaches them and trains them that even when they do get to that point and they're in a police situation and they're actually, with those police powers, they've got a badge, they've got a gun, they're still not thinking about pulling their weapon until it's absolutely necessary.
Yeah. Thinkers before shooters, kind of a mentality. It's what we end up doing a lot in the public properties that we're at, in downtowns, et cetera, is you're going to see people commit crime, right? Whether it's drinking in the parking garage, obviously urinating in public or doing something. Those are opportunities to, what we end up doing is we just track it, and then our approach to it is to go up there and let them know, hey, can't do that. This is why, and if you do it again, then we have to call the police, or don't. There's too many. There's a lot of police around here. You just knock that off. The little things that shouldn't be which in the past has been a lot of times call 911 and there's someone doing this or that, and it's like, I don't. That's not what police want to do. I mean, we want them to focus on real safety issues. Like I said, responding to violence and responding to bigger issues and drug trafficking and big things that we're concerned about, human trafficking. And so, if a guard sees something that's obviously a very dangerous situation. Now, if nobody's getting harmed right away, like if there was somebody in danger, then we're going to respond to it no matter what. We're going to call 911, our dispatches, or however we do it, radio it in, call 911. But we're going to respond if someone's life is in danger or whatever. But we're not going to respond to something that we feel would escalate to a situation where you need to have the police there. So I think a lot of times the system would filter out calls into 911 too, as long as everyone's on the same page for what it should be. So, but obviously you're not armed with a firearm, so you're more likely to observe and report and stay back unless, like I said, someone's in immediate danger or there's an arson going, something going where someone loss of life or someone getting injured is a concern, even loss of property. But it's I think it makes a lot of sense. But that's why, we all believe in it, and we all believe that this is actually an answer. This is a solution, and it's not like in the local police here, and everyone's been so really supportive about it and giving advice and offering. These are some concerns and things you want to think about. So it wasn't. I haven't hit a wall anywhere yet on this. It was just kind of getting it built, and kind of putting things together, and then then you start using data and showing results. Now, so the only company, I believe, we're the only private company that has the same software that law enforcement uses. So we have the same system of sharing videos and data back and forth, so we can share it directly with the police departments, prosecutors, detectives, etc. So, and we are. I think we got to be one of the largest private owners of body cameras of private companies. So I think we've got, something like 56 Axon cameras. So every single guard at Windom is always wearing a camera. Every single one. Very valuable, obviously. And then that's how you're sharing a lot of information with the departments. That was a big piece of it too. When I was talking to the governor, I said, that I always hear this. The motto is "see something, say something." I said, well, between the private security industry and local law enforcement, it's see something, say nothing. There is no system for it, and that's a shame, because there's a lot of valuable information that would be useful to local police if you can get it to them. So that was another big piece of it too. Is we want to show some value here as well. If we're going to be in these situations, that we can get it to the right people to do some good. So that's been a big piece of this, and then we've gotten a lot. Been very helpful. We've been told by local police by sharing this kind of information that's very useful. So there's a lot more to it. There's a lot more benefits to it than just a few different things here and there. So I really believe in the system, and I'm looking forward to continuing to grow it all throughout Maricopa County. And looking at the data, it shows success. You could pop this into another metropolitan city that has the same struggles and issues, and think of Seattle, San Francisco, Portland, Los Angeles. Those areas are they're having the same problems and concerns, and like you were kind of alluding to, if it works here, it can work anywhere. So but I'm looking into getting into more discussions about what am I missing, what are the pros and cons, but I keep pushing it because I keep getting a positive reinforcement from people when I talk about this is why I think this is a much better solution than what I've heard out there from the defund the policers. So
so let's talk a little bit about the data that you guys have, and you may not have specific numbers off the top of your head, but what kind of data have you provided at this point back to the governor and or the local police groups in each of the different cities, Tempe and so forth, where you're operating, as the number of 911 calls or the number of actual police officers that have had to respond to certain things because you guys have been able to pick that up, because that speaks to the amount of money that can be saved by this program as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The updates to my updates to the governor's office is just kind of on progress, or if I ever need any help or something, I'll kind of let them know. What I discovered, what we discovered at Windom was, we thought we were going to be sending all the information to one central hub, and from there it would get disseminated to where it needs to go and do some good. What we learned was it's actually more effective if we send that information to local precincts and departments as opposed to one central. So the information we send is at a local level, unless it's something that's shared with the county. So a lot of the data we're given is based on trends that we start to see. So we track everything. So, for example, to make it simple, let's say a city block in Phoenix. If we always run analytics on the data of what we're seeing, what we run into, and we'll run analytics and show, look, we're seeing an upward trend in narcotics or something. We'll say, and so we'll deliver these reports to a local, police officer, lieutenant, or mostly in crime prevention, crime-free parts of the department, and we'll start to give them a heads up. Now, this is what we're starting to really see over here, but we get police reports sent back to us as well. So every day we get all the reports on that involve properties we're in, so we can kind of take the information from what the police are seeing and what we're seeing and kind of run it together and say this is what's going on here, which is valuable to the patrol officers, because they can kind of get a heads up, especially when it's down to a specific property, and say, like, look, there's a lot of activity on this property. It's kind of looking like we're seeing a lot of traffic in and out, quick stops in and out. That information is valuable. Some of the communities, unfortunately, start seeing these upticks in prostitution and things that we'll just send this information off to and give it to them so they can get a heads up. It's, like I said, the extra eyes and ears on the street of what's going on. Now, we've been involved in some pretty major narcotics busts in the valley too. So where we got a detective would reach out in the beginning, whether it's all through one department or it's shared. Sometimes it's shared with a county or cities that work together, asking questions for what they're looking for, and we'll run backwards through our data on what's been happening on this particular, on this block or in this city. And we've been able to provide a lot of valuable information, pictures, videos, reports that led to some pretty big busts that took a lot of drugs off the street. And a lot of that's because we're there, and we're keeping track of everything. And especially if we're searching, bolos and be on the lookouts for certain people, the police officers someone will reach out to us and say, hey, here's a description. Have you seen him? We had a couple weeks ago, we had a pretty big bust of kind of a repeat. There's a couple that was just robbing apartment communities all over the place, and they were using U-Haul vans and stuff, and we had it on in our system, so every guard in those areas that was out at night, we use a lot. We have 20 patrol cars, so we have patrol cars that are bouncing out there, and we put it out there on there, and the first night we caught them. We got them arrested. So we're always trying to, use that information and do something with it. Obviously the person responsible for the properties, if it's on private properties, yes, they want to know what's going on. They're running a business too. But local police also want to get a heads up too, so they hopefully they can get some dangerous people off the street. On the private side, right, for the private companies that we're a lot of the work we do for apartment communities especially, we're constantly giving them information where they can do some good as well, especially with getting tenants out that shouldn't be in that community, that are making it hard for families, et cetera, et cetera. So if we're able to handle and get to a resolution on that, it's freeing up the police from having to deal with something like that. Like, we've given them everything they need to process, whether it's evictions or even notices to them that they need to change or got to go. So this is the work we're doing. If it's working, the private work we're doing is not new. It's just we have the systems that we use to do it are different, and we learn those from police. We learned a better way to patrol apartment communities by asking local police for what, this is the old way of what everyone's doing, and what do you think would be more effective? So we actually use something called the Cooper curve. It's a version of predictive policing, but we don't do it. That's kind of like it's one of those words you don't want to say, predictive policing, but I'll use it because we use data to find out when on properties, not where to go in communities, but when and where on actual properties are these issues happening, so we can focus our attention on first of all, figure out why, and then be there hopefully to prevent it or to deal with it when it's occurring. So a lot of the things that we do things a little bit different, but we free up police, we make the community safer, and it's working. So, and like I said, it's giving people, men and women, the opportunity to gain experience and to get them fired up too. A lot of working, solving a problem, working with local PD and making something better for a family gets people excited about a career as a police officer or something in public safety. So,
yeah, I mean, I think you said, this isn't anything new. I mean, this type of private security has existed for decades, right? Yeah. It's not that you're doing anything new, but I think you're doing it in a different way to where the people who work for you are committed, have a background in certain things, but they're looking towards the future and want to do a good job, as opposed to, not everybody's this way, but as opposed to a retired police officer who's just making some extra money on top of their pension at the end of their working years, right? And so I think you get a little bit different outcome. But, you mentioned the apartment community specifically, so kind of the last question I have for you as we wrap this up is, why apartment communities as opposed to, other industries, businesses, all those sorts of things that you could be providing private security for? Because
speaking to city councils and to police officers and leaders in policing, the question was asked: what bogs you down? What are you spending? What are a lot of calls for service for? It wasn't just high density communities, multifamily apartments, right? It was also convenience stores. There were some other things on there that we looked at as well, and we had gone through some meetings to look at, is this something that we really want to do, or maybe not. So we wanted to make sure that the work. Now, we've turned down a lot of work that wasn't really going to be a good fit for us, or ones that we frankly felt like it should not be a private company doing. But apartments are responsible for a lot of calls for service, and apartments already have security for the most part. It was completely done a different way than what we do. Even the ones that are out there, our competitors in this industry, they do it at the old-fashioned way, which we feel is a very ineffective way of doing it. We do it a much different way. So it was like, okay, good experience builder, solves a problem for the city. These are families that live in apartments. It's something that we wanted to obviously show in results that it positively impact families. It's a big deal. It's a motivator. And freeing up police, like we said, to focus on violent crimes and more things that they are better equipped to deal with, as well as want to deal with, was a better fit. So that was a big reason for it. The other part of the police reform too, just to throw it in there, was finding out different ways. Well, who should respond to homeless or people with a mental illness or having an episode? And people have looked at other options, and I've always compared them to it. Well, some is use a fire department or use a social worker. And I just knowing from experience, the thing that you have to be able to do is respond quickly. Now, we have a patrol grid across the valley where, for the most part, our goal is to try and respond to every call within 10 minutes. So we're pretty much like, everything is at least, it's 20 minutes or less is kind of our thing. That's very hard to do in the valley. Now, if someone calls into 911 and they relay it to a social worker who's sitting in an office and expect them to get in a car and get there in time, that's pretty much impossible. You're scheduling future appointments. We have the ability, because of our patrol model and grid, because their cars are already out there floating on their paper routes, we call them, in our dispatch center, is we're going to respond fast. So we're going to be able to respond much quicker. which is why we're being looked at from some of the police departments around to potentially be an option for someone that a 911 that comes in and it's a nonviolent. This is more of a let's just go go solve the problem, because we have the ability to respond very quickly, and that is a struggle with using like I said, using social workers who might on the scene be a great option, but if they show up an hour later, how else are you going to get someone to respond all over the valley if they're coming from offices? Now, that's the old system I was talking about as well from our competitors, is they'll have like a dispatch center with a bunch of cars and that could take off from there. We have, using our technology, just like in 911 at the police departments, where we have dispatchers who have all the maps are up and the car, you can see the cars moving around, and they're going to choose the closest vehicle to respond to those 1,000 calls we get every month. And that is one of the tough parts about what they're trying to. I've seen in police reform with using social workers is if you can't respond quick enough, it's a moot point. It's not gonna be. If you don't want the police to be there, then you got to find something else. Which is why we thought this is just another opportunity for why this in our opinion is more effective.
Yeah. So of the 1,000 calls per month that it sounds like you guys get on an ongoing basis, do you have statistics that show how many of those previously would have gone to a police car being dispatched or a police officer being dispatched?
Yeah, we tend to look at we look at data based one property at a time. We combine them all for looking at a city block. We can do whatever we want with the data, and it's I would say 90% of the calls could be considered would have just gone to a 911. The other 10% would be like lease violations. Someone's in the amenities after hours, or a dispute that is kind of more of you want them to get in trouble with the property manager, not the police. The rest of them are suspicious persons. Noise complaints is obviously a big one, depending on the season of the year. Homeless, but as well as domestic arguments that are obviously loud enough to where they're disruptive. So that's the majority of what those were, and typically those would be a call that it could be a non-emergency call to 911, but it'd still be a call that would get on the list for some patrol officer to have to go deal with. Vandalism as well is another one too. So there's a lot of things that we already handle that are things that free up police, whether the police not like they're going to respond right away to it, but it's going to be on their list. It's going to be one that's bogging them down for the day. And I don't see why we want police dealing with things like that. Let's let them work on the things that we really care about.
Yeah, I think that's a big deal. I mean, I think there's a potential opportunity for Windom as time goes on to specifically train your guards and officers to deal with just those types of disputes, right? And then, like you said, you're working truly with the community. Yeah. The police is just there for that violent, and they've got special training for those types of things, but everything else kind of reroutes to a company like Windom Security. I think that's a great way to look at how things can be truly reformed and different in our country.
Yeah, much cheaper. It is much cheaper to go that route. And picture, you got Windom gets there within 20 minutes. Maybe some areas were there in 2 minutes. Just depends on where the cars are. Sometimes you get lucky, and then at that moment, the guard that on the scene is going to make the assessment right away. And there's tons of examples where the guard's gotten there, and right when he's seen it, he's more of okay, this is an observe and report 911. He radios in dispatch and say, send the police. This is why. And then they're extra eyes and ears, and they're extra on there, so when the police show up, they're not blind. So a lot of times it's you go in there first just to check things. You're going there quickly, get there quickly, make a quick assessment, and say, we need the police. So I think so when the police are on their way, it's important. And I believe this is the right way to do it.
Yeah, I think you're doing some great work. We certainly appreciate, and I say we, Landon's here in spirit with us, but we appreciate you coming on the show. We talked in the pre-qualification call. We have a lot of things in common with you anyway. We're big into the veteran community. Neither one of us served, but we have family members that did, and we contribute to veteran, nonprofits and so forth. But we also both used to race motocross, and so we have that in common as well, and both have ties to Southern California as well. So it's been fun to have you here. It's real easy to see the passion that you have for what you do, which I think is awesome. You know, they say if you do something for your job that you're passionate about, you'll never work a day in your life. You know, I kind of screwed up the wording there, but you know what I'm saying, and you can feel that from you. It's not just words. It's not that Dylan's here, you know, trying to tell the story of Windom and drive business for Windom and find new employees, but it truly comes from your heart, and you can feel that, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. I definitely since starting on the nonprofit side with veterans and first responders, I always wanted to serve. You know, I always wanted to give back. And this, for me, I get to share in it. Whenever we have a win in a community, I get to feel like I was a part of that. You know, that feeling I've always wanted. I walked into a Navy recruiter's office right when I got injured. And started and took a lot of the tests and placement tests and everything, and that's the path I was taking. And then went a different way. So I've always had that, like, maybe that was what I should have done. That was for me. But now I think I like where I'm at. I like what I'm doing. I will always be I'll always be there for when the men and women get injured and for their families if they get killed. I'm never going to let off on that. But I really, this to me is a passion project that I think does a lot of good, especially, you know, and I don't know how this is going to sound, but especially for me. So,
yeah, I couldn't think of a better way to end the show. So thanks so much for being here, Dylan.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This was fun.
You've been listening to Tycoons of Small Biz, proudly hosted by Austin Peterson and Landon Mance. Austin and Landon are comprehensive financial planning professionals specializing in financial, estate, and succession planning for small business owners. Austin and Landon have offices in Scottsdale, Arizona, and Las Vegas, Nevada, and represent clients in 14 states throughout the country. Join Austin, Landon, and the featured Tycoons live every Tuesday at 1 p.m. right here on Business Radio X and your favorite podcast platform.